international obligations and has a constitution which promises equal protection and equality with regards to accessing economic benefits. But that reality is not always the case as far as laws and practices which continue to constrain women's rights, and discriminatory practices continue with horrific levels of gender-based violence that we often see against women. And as you saw in that package today, the Minister of Women in the Presidency, Bathabile Dlamini, leading a discussion organized by the Human Sciences Research Council in an attempt to add the voices of women in the current debate on landlessness and expropriation without compensation. Well, we're joined now by advocate Karabo Kgoeriadira, who was part of that panel discussion. She joins us from our Pretoria studios. Good evening to you, advocate Kgoeriadira. I mean, there's been much discussion about land expropriation in recent days, and my first question to you is, have women been placed sufficiently at the center of those discussions?
Good evening to you and all your viewers. In my view, no, we have not been adequately put as women at the center of this discussion. But today we have managed to deliberate on a few issues around the subject.
Well, of course, you would know that a woman's ability to own, inherit, control, and really be in charge of property is vital to anyone's ability to access resources and really to participate in a meaningful way in the economy.
I beg your pardon, can you repeat that? Sorry, I lost you.
We can't have meaningful participation of women in the economy if they don't own property, if they don't own the land. I mean, that's, I imagine, a central thrust of deliberations today.
Absolutely. Absolutely, sir. I mean, in the World Conference of the United Nations, it was specifically identified that basically women are powerless and propertyless, and we actually own and we receive only 10% of the world's economy and income. So therefore, without access to property, we don't get to benefit from the economy and grow within the economy as women, yes.
And in South Africa, that picture is particularly bleak, and the face of women who don't, it's the face of people who don't own land in this country is predominantly Africans, women, and of course people with disabilities.
Absolutely. However, in defense of our government, there have been good policies that have been drafted. The ANC-led government from 1992 have had land policies which included the upliftment of women, specifically the Reconstruction and Development Program, which recognized women's land rights, and numerous other problems. However, the problem that we've had in South Africa is the implementation of those policies, and that's what we need to do. But more importantly, we need to implement those policies in line with our original customary law. Rights of women, not those that were imposed to us by the Black Administration Act or the Native Act of 1913. We need to look at our original culture and customary laws and marry them together with the property rights and civil rights laws of today, so that we may go forward knowing where we come from and where we're going as African women.
How much is the issue of traditional leadership an impediment to what you've just described? In other words, taking into account the requirements of customary law, but looking at South Africa in terms of civil laws around land ownership. How much is the traditional leadership issue contentious there?
Traditional leadership for women in the traditional communal land, it all depends largely on the relationship and the status that a woman holds within the society or the community. One can look at her marriage, one can look at maybe she's a widow or the only heir of the family. However, we've got a wonderful customary laws and rights that adapt to the situation of its own community. So traditional leadership is not necessarily oppressive to women. And I like to say that this subject needs a different program altogether, because it is a very sensitive and, however, very deep subject that we need to engage in as women, so that we know our role in society and how we have to work parallel with men in terms of our culture, and how we have to marry our customary laws and rights and traditional leadership in communal land together with the men, and what is our role in society. However, we have to also think about women who are in urban areas and how the laws and property rights affect them. So women may suffer from the same inequalities, but they differ according to their marital status, global, across the board, rural, or are they in an urban area? You know, are their race? You know, so it depends on their level of education. So the oppression to land is rather different according to a woman's status in society, whether it be in rural area or in the urban areas.
Advocate Kgoeriadira, let me ask you this. There are those who would say, though, that discriminatory power structures still operate, particularly for rural women, and that perhaps it's a political expediency or political correctness to say that they don't, to say that traditional structures don't interfere with women's rights, particularly when it comes to access to land ownership.
Absolutely. Again, I will reiterate what I said. Our customary laws have been diluted to suit colonialism, and they have been diluted to suit the previous dispensation that we were in. However, if we go forward, so it left our women oppressed where land rights are concerned and many other rights are concerned. However, if we go back now with the very good policies that our government have put in place but have not implemented, together with what our original customary laws are, according to the different customs and different nationalities, and we marry the two, it will definitely be to the good of the women, an African woman and a woman of any race.
All right, we'll
but particularly in rural areas, we are talking about an African woman.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, Advocate Kgoeriadira. It's the women who work the land, but are they reaping the benefits of that labor? That's, of course, Advocate Kgoeriadira on the line there in our studios in Pretoria.